Canadian Bulldog with wrestling merchandise and memories. That's merchandiseandmemories.com. And today we're looking at 15 guest hosts of Raw that you totally forgot about. Just before we get started, wanted to remind you that Wrestling Merchandise and Memories has more than 100 unique and conversation-starting top 50 lists on its website. Check it out at bit.ly/top 50 lists. Way back in 2009, this disgusting guy agreed with this other disgusting guy that Monday Night Raw needed a revolving suite of guest hosts. Now, some were great, such as Bob Barker putting Chris Jericho in his place. Some were awful, like Jeremy Piven announcing a match at Summerfest and then turning heel for some reason. And some were fine, like Mike Tyson doing Mike Tyson things. But this list isn't about who is good in the guest role or not. It's about 15 guest star appearances that you totally forgot about. Number 1, Batista. Do you remember Dave Batista being the very first guest host of Raw? Me neither. The Animal was still very much part of the active roster at this point. In fact, he was world champion some 3 months before his guest host appearance and had to vacate the title due to injury. Right before he was a Guardian of the Galaxy, Batista got a measure of revenge on Randy Orton and Legacy, the guys who put him on the shelf, but didn't do much else that night. Number 2, Grumpy Cat. Don't look at me like that. You can't make this shit up. The OG cat meme sort of interacted with The Miz and Damien Mizdow backstage before quite literally falling asleep on air. While I can't really blame Battlecat for being disinterested in 2014 WWE programming, they should have at least brought in Joey Styles to do his cat fight! Number 3, John Lovitz. The actor best known for saying, "Yeah, that's the ticket," some 40 years ago, was brought onto Raw to host a talent show segment featuring the likes of The Great Khali, Jillian Hall, and Santino Marella. Man, if there was ever an opportunity for him to unleash his inner Jay Sherman and say, "It stinks," this would have been it. Number 4, Larry King. The talk show pioneer was a guest on a 2012 edition of Raw, and along with his 7th wife, Sean King, essentially recorded a podcast episode on stage between The Miz and Kofi Kingston. Larry the King Lawler should have instead reprised his role interviewing Shawn Michaels disguised as Old Man Hulk Hogan. That would have been way funnier. Number 5, Mark Cuban. The Dallas Mavericks owner and Shark Tank panelist was no stranger to WWE when he hosted in 2009. He'd even taken a bump before for Randy Orton. On this show, not only did the Mark Cuban assassin get a measure of revenge on the Viper, but he also moderated a discussion between John Cena and Sheamus, which ended with the Shark getting put through a table.
Dumbest marketing move ever. I'm out.
Number 6, Reverend Al Sharpton. Seen by many as one of the worst guest hosts in Raw history, the civil rights activist was part of a segment between the teams of MVP and Mark Henry and Chris Jericho on The Big Show. Even interacting with the Bellas twins backstage, Al wasn't exactly Reverend Slick. Number 7, David Hasselhoff. The Knight Rider and Baywatch star was all over this April 2010 edition of Raw, including giving Eve a shot at the Divas title and interacting with the likes of Batista and the Bella Twins. L.A. Knight Rider even arrived at the arena with a full entrance accompanied by the talking car Kid. If you smell what the Hoff is cooking. Number 8, Bradley Cooper. If you don't remember this Oscar-nominated actor on Raw, it may be because he was also there with his A-Team movie co-stars Charlton Copley and Quentin Rampage Jackson. Unfortunately, a star was not born on this episode, as Cooper and company didn't use their Silver Linings playbook to do much other than interact with legends such as Ted DiBiase, Virgil, IRS, and Mean Gene. Number 9, Buzz Aldrin. As one of the first men on the Max Moon, the astronaut was a questionable choice to host Raw some 40 years after his career-defining moment. Aldren interacted with Vicky Guerrero and Zack Ryder, but should have really brought in Mick Foley to do the whole One Giant Leap for Mankind promo. Number 10, Aaron Paul. I'm a huge fan of Breaking Bad, yet I was today years old when I found out that he was a guest host in 2014. Jesse the Body Pinkman acted as a cornerman and guest driver for Dolph Ziggler in his match with Alberto Del Rio.
Bitch!
Number 11, Florence Henderson. Here's the story of the mom named Brady, who had no reason to be on Monday Night Raw. She settled a dispute between Santino and Regal, and that was all we saw. Literally, that was it. Number 12, The Muppets. In 2011, Kermit the Frog, Gonzo, Miss Piggy, Beaker, and the gang caused all sorts of shenanigans on Raw, getting involved with The Miz, Sheamus, Christian, and many others. They did miss a golden opportunity, however, to reunite Chris Jericho with Fozzy. Number 13, Cheech and Chong. In March 2010, the comedy duo hosted Raw and pretended to be stoned. Because this was the PG era, all they could do was really pretend while engaging with the Bella Twins, Hornswoggle, and others.
Dave Batista's not here!
Number 14, Dr. Phil. The television therapist hosted Raw in 2016 and tried to counsel Charlotte Flair on being manipulated by her famous father. Had he only tried to get into the psyche of the Nature Boy instead, maybe Phil Ospreay could have had some compelling television instead. And number 15, The Three Stooges. No, not the originals. They'd been dead for decades by this point and probably tough to book, but rather Will Sasso, Sean Hayes, and Chris Diamantopoulos, who played Curly, Larry, and Moe in the 2012 remake. The Knuckleheads were fully in character on Raw, although Sasso did manage to do his spot-on impression of Hulk Hogan at one point. How many of these Raw guest hosts do you remember? Leave a comment below and be sure to thumbs up and like this video and subscribe to Wrestling Merchandise and Memories for more great content.